Derrick Rose is currently tracking to have one of the greatest comebacks of all time. And it's not that he's become a superstar all of a sudden, that's not why he's tracking to have one of the greatest, but it's because of what he faced and where he is right now. We're talking a torn ACL and, if I can remember correctly, 3 meniscus surgeries. He's been passed around from team to team, and I would say his lowest point was probably his stint in Cleveland. He only played 16 games there, started 7, averaged a grand total of 9.8 points, and his field goal percentage came down to 43.9, which is basically 44. But the big thing there was, of course, he took time off with the team, and then he came back, then he got traded. And then once he was waived by Utah, I think the thought process for most people was that he was probably never going to play again. At least I thought that. I was wondering who was willing to take a risk on him before he signed with Cleveland, so being waived by Utah, I thought that was pretty much it. So here he is now, 17 games through his Minnesota stint. Well, really actually it's 26, but he's played 17 this season, and this guy currently has averages of 19.4 points, he's shooting 48% from the field, and he's shooting a career high, and by far a career high, 47% from the three-point line. And it's not just his numbers. If you're actually watching him play right now, he's still got amazing speed, he's still got amazing control of his body, he's still got amazing finishing ability. And more as the games pass, he's starting to look like the Derrick Rose of old. Now, I'm not overrating this. He's not at his MVP form. I'm going to be clear about that. This is not MVP Rose. And I'm not saying he's quite there or that he's ever going to get there. But when you're just talking about Derrick Rose that we're used to seeing, driving to the basket confidently, just playing with confidence, this is one of the craziest things I've ever seen. And the reason it's so crazy is because despite everything this man has been through, I'm sitting here questioning, even if it's not going to happen, I'm questioning if Derrick Rose could be an all-star again. So we know that his season high was 50, that was all over the internet the day it happened. He's also got a 30-point game with that. And out of the 17 games he's played at the time of the recording of this video, 8 of those games have been over 20 points. And it's not just the high point totals that give me hope, but it's the fact that he's really reinvented his game. Because one of the problems I think he was having, and the reason why he kept getting hurt, is because before this, he's never been a prolific three-point shooter. You knew that he could hit it. I mean, you would prefer him not to be wide open out there. But he was never shooting him at this high of a clip. Even if the percentage is going to go down, he can clearly shoot threes now. So all of a sudden, he doesn't have to always drive into the paint and sacrifice his body. He doesn't have to do all of that to be effective anymore. And it's showing that as long as he's healthy, he's really getting back to being a starting caliber player. So as far as actually being an all-star, that would be an uphill battle this year for a couple of reasons. Obviously, he's playing in the West, and with 4 guard spots, he would have to make it over guys like DeMar DeRozan, Russell Westbrook, James Harden, Steph Curry, Klay Thompson, like it just goes on, right? And being that he's not starting, he's only started 5 games this year, it would be really hard to get him into that spot, even though people are probably going to vote for him. But with that, I don't see it, and also I'm looking at his minutes. We know Thibodeau and we know how he loves his rotations. And it was funny because one day, when was it? I think it was earlier this month, just like a couple of weeks ago. He wasn't playing with knee soreness. And I got curious about that. I was like, wow, you know, he's doing so well. And all of a sudden he's out with a sore knee again, which is to be expected. I mean, after 4 knee surgeries, it's not just going to be all fine down there. But then I looked at his minutes right before that. And the 4 games before it happened, he played 34 minutes, 36 minutes, 34 minutes, and 38 minutes. Oh my God, Thibodeau, are you kidding me with this? We're talking about a player that has an injury history here. No matter how well he's playing, those type of minutes will obviously not lead to a satisfactory result. But I give them credit for the adjustment, because after he missed that game, which I'm seeing was actually the 14th of November, since that he's played 4 more games, and his minutes now look like 33, 29, 29, and 29. So clearly they're adjusting. After that knee soreness, they're like, okay, we got to get you down, and they cut him down a sizable amount. It's quite a bit of minutes they cut him off here. So I've been a D-Rose fan for years now, but I will admit, at a certain point, I thought it was over. I'm not afraid to admit that. I didn't think he was trash or that he just couldn't play. I just didn't think a team was going to put money into him. But because of all that, and because I've seen what happens, and you know Derrick Rose can be there 1 minute and not the other, I really think a realistic goal for him is like he wants now. He said in his interview with 3D, Dennis Scott, his goal now is to be the 6th man of the year. Now that is attainable. If you're coming off the bench and you're consistently hitting over 20 points and you're helping your team win, that right there is doable. And I think that's more doable than him ever being an all-star. I would say as D-Rose fans, for anybody who is a fan of his, we can all hope that he'll get better and better and maybe one day he'll be what he was, but I don't think that's so realistic. I think after 4 knee surgeries, I think that it's best to hope for him to find a suitable role where he can play out the rest of his career and be great in that role. So for me, even right now, looking at how good he's playing, I don't have MVP hopes because there's just certain things that come with that. There's the usage percentage, there's the high level of play you have to maintain over a long time, there's the high amount of minutes that you have to play, and just with the way his body is, I don't think that's realistic. For me, what I hope for now is a better version of Grant Hill. Because if you guys know about Hill, he had the ankle injury, and for a while he was missing just huge chunks of the seasons, where he was only playing 21 games, 14 games, 29 games, he missed an entire season. And despite all that and him still having that huge scar on his ankle, after the season where he just didn't play anymore, he went on to play 9 more years and he was still effective. That first season back he was averaging 19 points a game, and it went down from there, but he was still a serviceable role player. And of course, naturally as age caught up with him, the production went down and then he retired. However, the thing with Grant Hill was when he even started to make his comeback, he was basically 34 years old. He was 32 with the All-Star year, then he got hurt again, I guess. Then he came back at 34, and most of the time he played a lot of those seasons. Derrick Rose is only 30 right now, and if he doesn't suffer anything severe past this point, he can definitely make himself a serviceable player, and that makes me excited for what comes after this year, because maybe he doesn't ever make another All-Star team again, because you're going to have to beat out some really stiff competition to be on any All-Star team. So maybe that doesn't happen, maybe he doesn't even become a starter again, maybe he prefers this role where he can conserve his body. But one hope that I do have that I didn't think was realistic before is that at some point now, because I believe he's only on a 1-year deal with the Minnesota Timberwolves, hopefully sooner than later he finds himself on a contender. Because now then you're back to the point where people trust him and they trust him to be there for an entire season. So if he can prove that this year and he can play well, maybe a contender takes a chance on him and Derrick Rose can end up an NBA champion. And so then you start having a conversation about the Hall of Fame. Because one conversation we've been having is Derrick Rose a Hall of Famer? Everyone was asking that. He won the 1 MVP. And a lot of people, including myself, was like, it would be really, really hard to get him in there. Yes, it's the Basketball Hall of Fame, but a couple of years in an MVP, I thought too much of his career had been consumed by injury to really make a case. But boy, get him on a contender and possibly win an NBA championship on top of that MVP and his comeback story, as a fan of his, I'd be content with that. Derrick Rose, the Hall of Famer, I would be content with that.